You want to throw the rules up there?
There's just going to be a few minutes. I wasn't prepared to go first.
Okey-dokey. Well,
So bear with me for just a
all
moment.
right, so planning will present, and then the applicant will present, and then we'll have public comment. You will keep your comments as friendly as possible. If you oppose, no direct attacks on anybody. You will speak directly to the commissioners. Any derogatory remarks or attacks, then you will be asked to leave the room. And we will move forward, and then we'll hear comments supporting, neutral, which we almost never have, but it could happen, and then opposed, and then the applicant and planning will get a chance for rebuttals. And then we will discuss amongst ourselves while y'all throw things at us. But you don't have to throw things at us. Strictly up to you. So, what do you think, Daniel? Getting there?
Well on my way.
All righty.
Jay, Jenna, can you make me a co-host? Okay.
Bless you.
So they're pretty organized, they have speakers, so I don't know that I put on the list, just can write their speakers up.
Okay, Commissioner, anytime you're ready. I believe.
All right. There you go.
Did you want to read the procedures?
Okay, staff presents staff report. Applicant provides overview of project, answers questions from the governing body. Public testimony and support. Neutral testimony, testimony in opposition. Public testimony may be limited to 3 minutes. Exhibits must be numbered prior to testimony. Exhibits will be retained by the county. Testimony must be specific to the project and code compliance, and avoid repetition. If somebody said what you were going to say, you can just say, I echo that or agree with the last guy, or anyway, and then the applicant rebuttal, and there'll be no further public testimony allowed after the rebuttal, and then the public hearing is closed and deliberation begins.
Steve, before you begin, I think you guys should probably talk about disclaim any conflicts of interest, number one. Also ask if there's anybody in the room who needs accommodation,
Hearing,
or other sorts.
yeah, if you have any special needs for hearing or visual, everybody can hear and visually, okay? All right. And then Commissioner Bradshaw has no conflict.
Commissioner Williams has no conflict.
Commissioner Ahmet has no conflict.
And Daniel Britt may attack at will.
Thank you, Commissioners. Members of the public, good afternoon. Commissioners, good afternoon. Daniel Britt, planning staff for the record. We're here this afternoon to discuss ZC 0018-22. It's a zone change from rural 10 to rural 5. So Bonner County Revised Code 12216 requires staff and the government bodies shall review the particular facts and circumstances of each proposal submitted and shall determine whether there is adequate evidence that the proposal is in accordance with the general and the specific objectives of the comprehensive plan. Bonner County Revised Code 12-320.1. There's purpose statements for each zoning district that help guide the applications to make a determination on the proposed zoning district. So we're here this afternoon to discuss the rural district. And the way the rural district is envisioned by the code is that the rural district is established to allow for low density residential uses that are compatible with rural pursuits. The way that looks is limited residential densities and permitted uses compatible with rural character and nearby resource production districts and sites that can be adequately supported by rural service levels. 2, allowing small-scale farming and forestry activities and tourism and recreation uses that can be supported by rural service levels and are compatible with rural character. And 3, encourage conservation development configurations that create permanent open spaces reduce infrastructure costs, and enhance recreational opportunities. So with that in mind, these are the standards to be either Rural 10 and or Rural 5 in an area. In order to be Rural 10, we look to see if land is characterized by slopes that are steeper than 30%, if there's any critical wildlife habitat, if prime ag soils exist on the site, if the site is served by public and private roads that do not meet the standards for Title II and Appendix A, which is the private road standards found in Bonner County Revised Code. It is within the floodway and contains its limited access to public services. The way Rural 5 looks is properties need to be developed at or near 1 dwelling unit per 5 acre density and or do not meet the criteria of the Rural 10. The applicant has proposed a zone change from Rural 10 to Rural 5 for the purpose of dividing the property into smaller lots. This request was evaluated against the standards for the Rural 10 and the Rural 5. The parcel is currently comprehensive plan rural residential. This is a look at the parcel and the current zoning that's there currently. The parcel is highlighted in red on your screen. It is a platted 15-acre parcel that is zoned Rural 10 and has a comp plan designation of rural residential, which allows 5 to 10-acre parcels within that designation. It is accessed off of Little Blacktail Road, which is a Bonner County owned and maintained right-of-way, and the parcel is adjacent to East Ridge Road, which is a privately owned and privately maintained road or easement. These are some environmental factors that are found on the property. It does contain, as we look at the picture on the bottom right of your screen there, that is our slope layer. And we can see the yellow indicates slopes that are between 15 and 29%. Everything in red there is 30% or greater. The parcel is highlighted in purple there. You can see that there is a small portion of slope that is greater than 30% or greater, but a majority of the parcel is at that 15 to 29%. It does contain a map wetland and mapped intermittent stream, which we see there in the purple, and the stream follows that for the wetland and going in the middle as it bisects through the property. So getting back to the criteria, the first criteria was if the property is characterized by slopes that are steeper than 30%. The parcel is not characterized by mapped slopes steeper than 30%. Though the parcel is mostly sloped, those parcels are mapped between 15 and 29% grade. According to the land use portion of the comprehensive plan for density ranges, the properties that are level to moderately sloped are appropriately sized to be 5 to 10 acres. The next criteria that we look at for the R10 is there a critical wildlife habitat? Idaho Department of Fish and Game determined that this parcel is not within a critical wildlife habitat. The areas that we're looking at in pink is Lake Pend Oreille there, the southern portion. That's all considered critical wildlife habitat, and the habitat that's there is bull trout. And that's the only thing that shows up on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife map, and that information is provided by them. Next is, does the property contain prime ag soils? So there is one soil type found on this parcel. However, it has two different unit classifications. One is 252 and the other one is 250. Both are considered non-prime farmland. Now we look at the roads. As we look at this slide here, please make note of the 3 black dots on the screen. We're going to be focusing on that one in the red box here shortly. So as we look at the roads to this parcel, it's accessed by way of a combination of Bonner County. It's accessed by the parcel by way of a combination of Bonner County owned and maintained roads, in addition to a private easement. The easement is a 60-foot privately maintained recorded easement. So the easement itself is not built out at 60 feet, but it can be if chosen to. So the space is available for that. Bonner County Road and Bridge indicated that increase in traffic could negatively impact Little Blacktail Road, as traffic counts are already exceeding what the gravel road was built to accommodate. So this is that first blacktop we were looking at up in this area here. And this is looking at the parcel. This is the east entrance where it looked like some logging had taken place on the parcel that we're talking about this afternoon. And this is East Ridge Road looking northwest, which is more or less on this curve that we're looking at on the picture. The next couple shots are taken from Blacktail Road itself. So this is turning around from that east entrance on to the parcel that's looking east, and this is the condition of the road. As we get out to Blacktail Road, looking north, here in the center is Blacktail Road and the condition it is as of yesterday. In addition to, this is the intersection of East Ridge Road and Little Blacktail Road. So the next criteria that we look at is it within the floodway? So as we look at this map here and the legend here, if there was any floodway or flood hazard zone on this parcel, it would either be indicated in red and or blue. This parcel happens to be within special flood hazard zone D, which is an unstudied area. So there is currently no mapped floodway or flood hazard zone. Public services that are afforded to this parcel can be an individual well, an individual septic. If we look at the picture to the right here, it shows that this is the fire district for Timberlake Fire District, so it's within that fire district, as well as in Lake Pend Oreille School District number 84, which is indicated in the purple here. The vast majority of that area is served by that. Power is through Northern Lights Incorporated. These are the following agencies that were routed for comment: Patna Health District, Bonner County Road and Bridge, Lake Pend Oreille School District number 84, DEQ, Idaho Department of Fish and Game, all submitted letters of comments or recommendations for this proposal. Idaho Department of Lands replied with no comment, and we didn't hear back from all the other agencies. This is a map of the neighbors that were noticed of the parcel. State law requires a 300-foot buffer from property lines, noticing being mailed, as well as a site posting indicating of the proposal. So there were several public comments that were received on this file, and given the attendance this afternoon, there's a strong interest in it. Most of those letters, the overlying theme was the road maintenance, the wetlands, wells, septic systems, and subdividing the property. All those public comments are included in your binders this afternoon. So looking at the conclusion of standards, we've learned this afternoon that this parcel is not characterized by slopes that are steeper than 30%. There is no critical wildlife habitat. There's not any prime ag soils. It is served by public roads and private easements that are meeting or exceeding Title II or Appendix A, which is the private road standards. It's not within a floodway, and it is not limited to public services. It is, however, developed at or near one dwelling unit per 5-acre density, and in that map, there was a parcel adjacent to the west that is at that 5 acres currently, along with other parcels scattered throughout this subdivision that are in or around 5 acres. And also, it is not meeting any of the criteria for the rural 10. Findings and facts haven't changed since the time the staff report was prepared. I briefly covered all those in the presentation. So staff has found this request is consistent with Bonner County Revised Code. The Zoning Commission recommended unanimously for approval with a development agreement. Commissioners, that development agreement and conversation was mainly based on the road and the maintenance of the road. This is taking a look at Little Blacktail Ranch subdivision and the different phases that's at. The parcel we're talking about, once again, is highlighted in red there. All the other purples and light purples and turquoise that you see up there are the different phases of the subdivision for your reference. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
I have no questions.
It's zone 10, but you said that usage was 5R10. You confused me on that statement, so.
So the comprehensive plan allows, the designation is rural residential by the comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan envisions parcels within that designation to be either 5 or 10 acres. The zoning ordinance, which is different than the comp plan, does allow, the rural district allows for acreage to be 5 acres as well as 10. But for example, if you wanted to do 2.5 acres in the rural residential, you couldn't do that without going through what we're doing today, which is a zone change, if the land would meet that criteria.
That was my question.
Okay.
I don't have any questions for the planning department.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to take a moment to pull up the applicant's presentation.
Please state your name for the record.
My name is Connie Kruger.
And you represent the applicant.
I do, yeah. So I have a presentation here for you today, Commissioners. This explains a little bit about who the owner is and who I am. The owners of the property are Mike and Amanda Monty, and they are the owners of North Pacific LLC, which is the property, the deed ownership for the property. Mike and Amanda also own North Pacific Land Management, and they work in the area doing logging land management activity. My name is Connie Kruger. I'm a AICP certified planner. I work out of the Coeur d'Alene area, do a lot of work up in Bonner County. I don't think I've been before the commissioners. A lot of the work that I do is administratively with the staff on different projects. We also own a company called Johnson Surveying Northwest, which also does work in the area. Some of my slides are going to replicate Daniel's, but again, just to kind of point out the location where we're at, we're on the east side of Highway 95, and you can see the little blue parcel in the second graphic showing where the property is located at. Some of the key items that I will talk to you about today, I'm going to go into these in greater depth, but this is just a quick little summary of those, is that our comprehensive plan designation is for rural residential 5 to 10. We're currently zoned R10, and we are proposing R5. And our land characteristics actually meet the R5 zoning definition versus the R10. We are located in an area where there are variable lot sizes. Those lot sizes range between 5 and 16 acres in the immediate vicinity around us. And then we have a large volume of US government and Stimson land holdings that will likely remain undeveloped. The 2 additional lots that we have within that localized area would represent a 3% increase in platted lots in this area. So again, if the land is rezoned, we have 15 acres. If we were to do a subdivision, that would allow for the base lot plus 2 additional lots. One lot to the east of this property is a U.S. government land holding adjacent to Lake Pend Oreille, and there's a public trail easement connecting to that. And we have frontage directly on East Ridge Road, which is a private road. East Ridge accesses Little Blacktail, a county-maintained local road, and that's approximately 2,100 feet to the west. We will be serviced by utilities and driveways that will be installed at the cost of the owners. And the owners will enter into road maintenance contract with the Little Blacktail Ranch Park HOA. Public services are available, and taxes and fees will be paid with specific services and infrastructure. As you've seen in the staff report, the agencies have approved, commented, or recommended conditions, and the Zoning Commission has recommended approval with one condition, which is to enter into a zoning development agreement to contract for road maintenance with the adjacent HOA. A little bit of specific property information. You can see the 2 graphics here. I've zoomed in on the property, and you can't, on the second graphic on the right side, it's kind of cutting off the plat, but this is the plat of Sleeping Bear. And so this is 15 acres in total. We're lot 2 of Sleeping Bear, which was recorded in 1997. Again, we've talked a little bit about the trail easement, the individual septic tanks and drain fields and wells that we'll have. As far as the owner's plans to subdivide, the 2 additional lots that we could realize would be with a plat. But at the time of plat, we would be evaluated for steep slopes, wetland and riparian areas, buildable areas, septic, hydrogeologic features, and the like. So we're not certain if we could actually have 2 additional lots. It may only be 1 additional lot. We'd have to see what that looks like at the time of subdivision. The comprehensive plan designation for the areas Daniel went into at some length, but again, this is for rural residential 5 to 10 acres. And this is for areas that are outside of sewer districts, areas where subsurface sewage disposal can be achieved without adverse impact to surface or groundwater. Outside of prime ag lands, the slopes are level to moderate. Access may be from private or public roads, and the sites are away from city centers, but generally accessible to the nearby transportation networks. This also excludes the areas with steeper slope and areas that include critical wildlife habitat areas. So this zone change would allow the owner to subdivide to a smaller lot size that would be more consistent with the area and the comprehensive plan designation. This is from Bonner County Code, and this is the proposed land use matrix. And if you take a look at the blue row, that is the rural residential. Again, it allows for a density of 5 to 10 acres, so you can be served by individual services under the zoning. If you look at the footnote on transportation, the footnote actually allows for access via private roads in an area like this. And again, 0 to 30% slope. To evaluate a zone change, the Bonner County Code lays out the criteria for that. It says that the staff and governing bodies will review the particular facts and circumstances of each proposal and decide if there's adequate evidence that the proposal is in accordance with the general and specific objectives of the comprehensive plan. For a zone change proposal, the request shall be evaluated against Chapter 12, Subchapter 3.2 is hereafter amended. And when we look at that section, we see that it points us to zoning districts and map designations. And basically here it points you to the different zone districts that will apply. And so the logic with that is that you look back to the zone district criteria for that specific zone district in evaluating an amendment. So looking more at the table that I just showed you. Also the definition, which comes from County Code 12.323, rural district. The rural district is established to allow for low density residential uses that are compatible with the rural pursuits. And again, I'm not going to go into all of these, but this shows you the areas for R10, which are usually those areas that are steeper than 30%. They have critical wildlife habitat. They have prime ag soil. They're served by a network of inadequate roads. They're within the floodway and they contain limited access to public surfaces. Our property does not meet any of those criteria, though it is currently R10. And what we're requesting is R5, which according to Bonner County Code is for areas designated rural residential in the comprehensive plan that are already developed at or near the one dwelling per 5 acre density and do not meet the criteria above. It's important to look at the parcel within the context of the surrounding development. And so with this graphic, you'll see the 4 plats of Little Blacktail Ranch. And in green is phase 1. And in that phase, there are 24 lots and they range from 6.39 acres to 14.31 acres. Phase 2 is yellow. There are 29 lots and they range from 5.25 acres to 16.31. Phase 3 is purple, and there are 4 lots, which are 8.9 to 11.8 acres. And then phase 4 is kind of the blue-green color that you see off to the east, to your right in the graphic. And there are 4 lots, which range from 8.6 acres to 11.5. Important to note that there are CC&Rs on these plots, and they govern a variety of different things, including that they can have the ability to put provisions within their own CC&Rs that would prevent subdivisions and rezones. There are some undeveloped or not fully developed lots. There are 61 lots in total, and so the 2 new lots with our development would increase the platted lots in the area by 3%. Looking a little bit further at the land use in the surrounding area, the land directly to the north of us is accessed via a separate road. So it's accessed by Little Blacktail Ranch as it moves to the north. There are about 320 acres of Stimson lumber and 1,600 acres of U.S. government lands in the area to the north of us. To the east, this is the land that's along Lake Pond Rays, so there are thousands of acres that are owned by the U.S. government, and there's one small ownership that I saw in the kind of close proximity that was Stimson lumber. To the south is 560 acres of Stimson lumber. So again, we're looking outside of the Blacktail Ranch development here and looking at these surrounding properties. There is one private 40-acre parcel in that area. And to the west, there are a variety of largely unplatted properties. So as we look in this area between the highway and Little Blacktail Ranch, quite a number of unplatted properties ranging in lot size. The physical feature of the property, there is a creek on site, and any creek and wetland will be mapped with appropriate buffers that will be applied at the time of subdivision. The property is currently undeveloped. There's grass, shrub cover, and timber. The owner did log the property recently, and he did leave timber cover near the stream. I believe that was about a 70% harvest that he did on the property. The soils are non-hydric, and the topographic mapping building sites would be developed and the impact of them determined at the time of platting. Again, this is not a FEMA mount floodplain along the creek, and stormwater design would be done relative to any driveway system. Moving on to transportation. I mentioned earlier the proximity of Little Blacktail Road, which is about 2,100 feet to the west. We did see in the prior to the prior hearing, the comment that came in from Roads and Bridges that was also in the staff presentation today. And so at that time, I did follow up with Matt Mulder in the Roads and Bridges department and asked him about the comment. And he said that they had not been up to visit the site recently, that they were making general statements related to the upper extent of Little Blacktail Road. And so we talked about snow removal, and he did say that they were able to complete snow removal through the extent of Little Blacktail Road to where East Ridge Road departs to the east. Again, they would need to go out and actually visit it to know the extent of maintenance. We did take a look at Little Blacktail Road, and as you head north from East Ridge, it does narrow, and there is a lot of tree cover that's kind of encroaching down on the road. But again, this is further north on that public road than where the departure to this property would be. They did state also that their comments were, or Matt did state that the comments were provided in the context of full build-out scenarios. And they said they're often asked about that from county departments, and that they did not have a strong objection to a smaller project similar to this. Moving further, just in general access, we're accessed by East Ridge Road. It's a local access road that's privately maintained by Little Blacktail Ranch Park HOA. The easement leading to and across the property is a non-exclusive easement for ingress, egress, and utilities over, across and under all existing roads or roads to be built. And again, the owner, pursuant to the direction of the zoning commission, is willing to enter into a road maintenance agreement or road maintenance contract with the HOA. One thing that did come up in public comment, and we didn't have a lot of time to address it before the last hearing, were some concerns about road damage from when Mr. Monty was in logging the property. And, you know, again, this is a snapshot in time. This was the day of the hearing. I just, you know, when I hear these things kind of last minute, it's like, well, let's go take a look at the site. And so Mr. Monty and I went out and we documented 3 potholes that were beginning in front of the property. They were each about 1 inch deep and about 12 to 13 inches wide, so fairly round, shallow potholes. And you can see in the lower left, that's actually my foot and my hand where I'm placing a measuring tape down in, and we're kind of measuring the depth of that. There was also a depressed trench in that area. It was still, you know, kind of a little wetter in that season, but it was about 8 feet long, about 2 inches, maybe 2 1/4 inch deep. And I didn't put the width here, but I think it was anywhere from maybe 16 to 24 inches wide, somewhere in that realm. I couldn't find my notes today to verify, but I believe that's what it was. The owner did leave timber in the roadside storm drainage area for an extended period of time. The HOA contacted him multiple times and asked him to remove it. And he did not remove it immediately, but he has removed it. And so you can see and he removed it before the hearing and before the public comments, as far as I'm aware. But you can see here the drainage ditch on the lower right-hand side. And behind that, you can see some of the timber remnants, debris that were likely part of what was left in that drainage area. So no materials remain in that area. And I did just kind of say in the creek and wetland areas too, because we did observe where the creek comes under the road and we didn't see any materials that were left in that area. Moving on to utilities, any new lots would be served via new individual or common well. There was a lot of discussion last hearing about the possibility of a water system in the area that we could participate in, kind of, you know, mixed information on whether or not the water system would be adequate or not. So at this point in time, we're just saying that we would be served by a new individual or common well. Certainly open to exploring it, but it didn't seem like it was an extremely firm thing at the time anyway. Again, a well would be constructed at the time of building permit. The IDWR well logs vary in the area, so kind of a hard area to go into and really look at well logs and determine what will happen on the property. I work a lot with hydrogeologic assessments, and in areas like this, they can be somewhat unpredictable. If you get out into the aquifer, other types of you know, materials, sometimes it is a little more predictable. Basalt is one where you'll see more predictable movement. The county can require a hydrogeologic study for minor subdivision. I believe they required one of me before, and I believe the ordinance is written that way. Sewer, we would be served by on-site sanitary sewer, which again, the tanks and the drain fields would be constructed at the time of building permit, and test holes would be likely required for the platting. The zoning commission did make a unanimous recommendation for approval of the rezone with a development agreement requiring a road maintenance contract with the HOA within 12 months of approval of the rezone. At the end of the meeting, the zoning commission chair did stand up after the meeting had ended, and he requested that the parties work together in good faith to accomplish this. We have contacted the Little Blacktail Ranch Park HOA president. We've spoke with her twice. She was very generous in her time and offered a lot of good information. We did offer a road maintenance agreement versus full participation in the HOA, and offered to send a draft road maintenance agreement, but the offer was declined for that. And I, kind of taking from the discussion, I believe the reason why is because the HOA documents are complex. There's a lot to administer there, and the preference would probably be to have us join fully into the HOA.
Is your client willing to join the HOA or no?
He's a little bit reluctant to, and that's actually the next item that I have. And the reason that he's reluctant is that the HOA documents don't pertain just to the road. They pertain to, the types of uses that are allowed, different maintenance standards, things like that. They're also 15 pages, and I did provide a copy of these. I don't have 3 copies of these, but I would like to make that an exhibit into the record of what we were provided with, which is the 4th Amendment to the HOA documents. And I'd also like to enter into the record the road maintenance agreement. But it's likely would be what we would want to discuss further with the HOA. One of the things that, as I reviewed the HOA documents, then what I found, and again, I think I understood the HOA president's reluctance a little bit more, is you review them, the documents in nearly all sections contain language relative to road maintenance, different varieties of assessments, definitions in different areas, areas that relate to tax increases for common areas, and the common areas are defined to include more than just the road. And they also have provisions for insurance and a variety of other things. And so I do develop road maintenance agreements quite frequently for my clients. And as I try to work through developing something like this for Michael, what I found is that there were, again, a large number of areas within those HOA documents that we would need to pull from. And so what we've identified here are just the things that we think would probably be part of a contract or an agreement. And in the draft road maintenance agreement, I put in the specific sections, but I think what's important is just kind of the topics that we think would be important, which is the payment of assessments, how they define assessments, common expenses. They have regular assessments, extraordinary assessments, special assessments. They have a section dealing with allocation of assessments, and then payment of taxes assessed against a common area or personal property of the association. They also have a section on enforcement of assessment obligations, which I imagine would be very important to them. And so on page 2 of our agreement, we have language related to that. In the insurance section, also on page 2, we refer to their HOA documents in Article 8.1. And you'll notice here, again, it's very important that as HOA documents are amended, and you can see these have been amended before, that we would recognize that, those amendments going forward. So that being said, we did offer it. We understood that the preference would be full participation in the complete HOA. And they did say that there were other private properties who had joined the other HOA. So again, a really good discussion on that. Again, this is just provided to show you what we think the areas of concern likely would be. There could be more. We do know that the Planning and Zoning Commission in their motion stated that we would need to enter into this road maintenance contract with the HOA within 12 months of approval of the rezone. So, acting in good faith, we made contact, but we do understand that these things take time and that we would need to work through them. But we would hope that if this is approved, that the owners would be able to work toward some solution with the HOA in a fairly expedient fashion. So that is my presentation, and I am available to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Okay, I understand that the public comment, y'all gathered 2 or 3 speakers. rather than going down through the list. Who wants to go first? State your name for the record.
Christine Sandal.
This is 4.
This is in opposition to the zone.
4 first.
What?
Those that are in favor of first.
In favor.
Are there any?
Are there any in favor of?
No.
Well, let's shorten that out. How about
Guess it did.
anybody want to be neutral today? Which almost never is neutral. But
Okay.
starts out neutral and then goes one way or the other.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
you're up.
All right. So I'm here as I'm a resident of the Little Blacktail Ranch Homeowners Association. Been there for at our property over 20 years, and I'm very, very familiar with the area. I'm also have been on the board of the Little Blacktail Ranch Water District, which is a separate entity from the HOA. But I'm very concerned about water resources for myself and for my neighbors, whether they're part of the water district or not, because we really all depend on the same water. Okay, it's a watershed that's complex, and it's not like out on the Rathdrum Prairie where you have the Rathdrum Aquifer. There are little aquifers. Some are plentiful with good water, others are not, or some neighbors can't get water, and therefore, back a long time ago when Larry Donnerberg subdivided this area into the Little Blacktail Ranch area, there's phase 1, there most of those properties can't get water. They have to be on the water district. And so as time went on, the need to meet standards with DEQ took place. Oh, and I forgot to mention, okay, I won't be able to make the points I need to make in 3 minutes, and so I have several of my neighbors, the Berubis, are yielding their time to me. Okay, and so just a little bit of background there. And before I really get started, I want to say, glad to meet you, commissioners. And nice to see you again, Mr. Bradshaw, and want to thank you for helping us with when we had our emergency event out in our area, and that helped us get a DEQ emergency funding to fix the damage. So I appreciate that so much. Okay. I'm concerned about long-term consequences of the decision you're going to make, and I'm sure that you are too. But I think it's important to get some other background that you might not necessarily be aware of. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention. My main concerns about property rights lost by the property owners in our area, not just the HOA area, but the surrounding neighbors as well. And I'm concerned about water quantity and quality in the future, because we have a somewhat fragile hydrology in the area. And so I'm concerned, and I kind of feel like I know about it because I've been with the water district and kind of understand the workings of that. The survey that was provided by provided to the planning and zoning really looks incomplete to me, and it really needs a closer look, because there is a second stream on that property and an area that's wet, and it has vegetation there that tells that it's wet perpetually. Okay. It may not have standing water in it all season, but it has a vegetation that would not be able to handle that. And so that really needs to be taken into consideration. The area that in the piece of property for zoning, it does have a stream flowing through it that starts up in the Stimson property and then flows down and then flows into our watershed and into the federal wetland in our area, and so changes to the water table, more wells put in that area could really impact lots of people that depend on that water for filling their reservoir for wells. That recharge rate could change. And so there's a lot of unknowns that I'm just really concerned about and really want to point out.
I'm really concerned that the natural resources ordinance hasn't really been looked at to the extent that I hope that it would before you make a decision. The letter from the Fish and Game recommended not dividing Sleeping Bear Acres into 3 separate pieces because of the lay of the land, the terrain, and the water that does flow through it or comes from it. The properties that are platted in the Little Blacktail Ranch area were platted a long time ago, and they were platted, taking into consideration the terrain and the roads. And so they were really thoughtfully, carefully laid out, and they're not just rectangles laid out for convenience. They were laid out for the benefit of the property owner and the sustainability of the area. And so our neighbors are really interested in maintaining that. And I would hope that the same kind of care would be taken in any changes that take place. That long-term sustainability is very important. Some of the wells in our area have, with some drought years, have lower levels of water now. Okay, so the level of water has dropped. And in the future, can you imagine if, say, the area north and a little bit west of Sleeping Bear Acres was subdivided into 5-acre plots with lots of each individual well in that area, how that would impact the hydrology of the existing homes. I mean, that is a major concern to me. And I hope that that's taken into consideration with any decision that you make, is that there are some things that are not really assured. And there's a likelihood that the Stimson land will continue to be enforced, but there's the chance that they'll decide this is not as productive as we'd like, and let's just subdivide it into 5s. And what would that do to the infrastructure, the roads, the amount of water, the quality of water that we get? It's just all a huge question mark. I'm really optimistic that you'll take the time to take a really close look at those situations that could affect us. I think setting a precedent for dividing pieces into 5-acre lots would be devastating to the existing homeowners and probably the people that do purchase those subdivided lots in the future. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Name for the board.
Mr. Chairman, if we could, are we allowing unlimited public comment, or are we sticking to the 3-minute? Typically, what we do is if you go over 3 minutes, then somebody can donate to their time.
And that's what they've done here.
Yes.
Yeah. They've
They
already
came
prearranged that.
Good morning. Let me introduce myself. My name is Tess Hahn. I'm a long-term resident of Bonner County. I've been voting and paying taxes here and so on for several decades. I've produced timber here and harvested it. I've practiced medicine here for 25 years. I teach 4-H, but I also am in the Idaho Forest Owners Association. And I'm not representing them, but I speak as a landowner because I actively have 100+ acres of agriculture and timberland within a mile vicinity of this place. So I want to give you a little perspective on that part. Historically, Carywood is known for its timber production. The settlement was, because of the abundant valuable trees there and so forth. Properties in this area have developed because of timber, proximity to timber production. So many of the roads here began as logging roads, and family-owned forest land still predominates, as well as the corporate lands. One of the things that happened, we speak of precedent. The Little Blacktail Ranch Park came about because it was purchased, the land was originally forest land from the United States, and Mr. Donnenberg got it. So to think that the Stimson will not want to assess their business situation is naive. I mean, certainly, and a lot of my land there and other large landowners that also, like myself, are not in the homeowners association. I mean, what's to stop me from destroying the whole thing? You know, so I won't, but this is very significant. Another situation that comes up that I wanted to bring to your attention, State of Idaho, the Code 63-1701, and the Bonner County have formal tax incentives for forest taxation. You know it as the forest, the tax exemption. It's not really exemption, it's deferral. And this is to encourage people to produce timber. We really like this. The required size for properties to be eligible for a forest land exemption is 5 acres if it's no residential, or 6 acres if it is residential. So if this were to be spot zoned into a 5-acre, 3 5-acre parcels, you effectively create 3 parcels that will never be able to be eligible for the timber land exemption. What that does is it takes the incentive away that the state and the county have said. So this is something that is not even mentioned here. You know, we really have to preserve. The other thing is that Idaho Title 22, Chapter 45 says no owner may be deprived of full and complete use of agricultural land for production of any product and so on. So, if the land use is enacted by land use restrictions enacted after the commencement of their use. This parcel has always been forest land. To cut it up into parcels that are not eligible even for taxation in the manner that it's been done historically, I think there's something you really need to take a look at that. I wanted to address the situation of this 5 acres. Regarding the 5-acre single parcel to the west of this property in question. Page 22 of the land use regulations or designations of the comprehensive plan says there may be parcels that are less than the required minimum due to long-term existence. These parcels shall not be used as justification for further lot size minimum reductions. It's clear, clear, clear. The rule would certainly apply to this 5-acre parcel. Historically, I can tell you, this 5-acre parcel was purchased from the Reeders for the Babinskis. The Babinskis owned all of their family homestead owned all the west of that, and they have a large family, and they took the additional 5 acres so that they could add it to their timberland, so they could add it to their family. So it was all done by, approved by Commissioner Mueller long before the 2008 plan. So it's predating. Similarly, down the road, down past my other home, there are a lot of small parcels. They're all R10, but they are smaller size, but they predate. They were historically there. So please don't be dissuaded by that idea. The nearest actual R5 is about 5 miles away. My second objection is that this spot zoning process seems to me to be a matter of putting the cart before the horse. Idaho Section 676504 states there should be sub-area committees developed to assist in updating the comprehensive plan for specific areas. This process was done in all the other areas, not all the other areas, but in other areas of Bonner County, such as Sago, Priest River, Old Town, and the southwest section of Bonner County. In every case, the surveys, the polls that were done say that the people want to keep a rural nature to their rural character. They had, the citizens there had the opportunity to work together with planning and to put input to tell the unique situations. Cary would like to be afforded the same opportunity. So this is a bit, spot zoning one parcel out of context is not right. When we go back to that matter of the taxation, 60 of the 61 parcels of the Little Blacktail Ranch are qualified for timber production. I'm very interested that they timber. I am in the forest management plan. I help them to learn to manage their timber. It's not going the right way if you spot zone one parcel in there of R5 and make it so that those new owners cannot even qualify for timber production. I want to really suggest to you, I mean, I've been in your spot. I have served on a lot of medical boards, state, local, national. I've served chair. I know what you guys are up against. I mean, you have to follow statute and so forth. This is not a hard thing, not an easy situation. It's particularly hard when you have a lot of people who want to convey to you that they have chosen this area intentionally. They have put their hard-earned money to buy into this area, to large parcels, to lower density, to planned to be with the terrain. This is an entirely different situation than someone who comes in and a couple of months later decides to, profit. I have nothing against profit, but I'm just saying this is going to make a problem for this community. I spoke this to the planning department. I felt like the planning department had their mind up before we even addressed it to them, because there was a comment made which I felt was really inappropriate. And that is, well, we want to see this all R5. This was spoken before we even had a chance to present our ideas. So please remember that the citizens of this county, we vote. We voted with our wallets to be there. We vote with our votes. And we want the choice to live where we want to live in parcels that are appropriate for the area. Every survey shows that we want those larger parcels. Please use your discretion, use your judgment here. I know we've got people that are checking off the list. I take exception to some of those things. I think there are some inaccuracies, but that's not my thing to figure out. But please retain our property rights to live in a place where we've chosen to live, not somebody buy 10 acres, and we're not taking anything away. He can make a beautiful home site there, but you're taking away from all of the other people in the vicinity. So I ask you to please be wise. Thank you.
Thank you.
State your name for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Lilly. I'm a resident of Carywood. Thank you for your time this afternoon, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your service to the county. We are unanimously opposed to this, but please don't take our very firm resolution against this project to be in any manner a reflection of disdain for this board. We have great respect, I think, for everyone on the board. You have heard and you will hear a number of very cogent reasons why you should not approve this. But I plan to tell you with all due respect why you may not do this. And that is Idaho Code 67, Chapter 65, Local Land Use Planning, 65-6511. I'll read you some excerpts. It says, within a zoning district, not parcel, zoning district, the governing board shall, where appropriate, establish standards, so and so and so, including occupancy, size of courts, yards, open spaces, density of population, location and uses of buildings and structures. That clearly includes the lot size. Okay, so it says that within a zoning district, you establish that. Now it goes on to say, all standards shall be uniform for each class or kind of buildings throughout each district. You may not, by Idaho law, And I'm not mad at you. I'm just upset about this issue. You may not, under Idaho law, approve a zoning change for an individual parcel. You must leave it the same unless the entire district is rezoned. Now, if this board, or this, I guess I'll call you a board, I don't know what you call yourselves, but if this board, well, I won't call you some of the things I've heard, okay?
Thank you.
If this board proceeds with approving this, you are exposing the county to potential litigation, to potential liability, and you are giving the appearance, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but you are giving the appearance of cronyism and favoritism. Those of us that were not fortunate enough to grow up here, I was a government contractor. I spent my 20 years working for the government, and I came here as soon as I could, okay? All right.
Welcome home.
Thank you very much. All right. We, as Tess has pointed out, we purchased here specifically because we want this lifestyle. We left areas of this country that unfortunately crawl with cronyism, crawl with government being in bed with developers, with planning departments being sympathetic to developers and not sympathetic to the neighborhood. And again, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I can't believe that anybody here would do that, but it gives that appearance and it sets a precedent. It exposes the county to potential liability. And on those grounds alone, if there were no other reason, I would respectfully request that you deny this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Any questions? If
Appreciate your passion. Next. Be sure and state your name for the record when you get to the mic.
Yeah, good idea.
Can you get it out? I was gonna lower it. I was gonna lower it for you.
It doesn't amplify, it's for online. Thank you.
Oh, it's working.
But he was clearly heard everywhere.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Joan Spencer, and I do have extra time. I live on a 2-parcel farm in Coquilala with my son and daughter-in-law and their children. Our farm has been in the family since my parents-in-law bought it in 1961. I own 4 lots in Little Blacktail Ranch Park, including one that's just a stone's throw away from the 15-acre piece being discussed today. My parents, Larry and Edith Donnerberg, moved to Bonner County when I was 6, and I've lived here ever since, except 2 years plus college. Dad built and operated for over 30 years a small sawmill in Bonner County. During that time, he bought several tracts of timberland, had them logged, and then sold them, with one solitary exception, and that's Little Blacktail. He loved developing his dream into 60-plus no-two-alike lots, each of sufficient size to afford privacy. My father did not want homes to be built one practically on top of the other. Very germane, I believe, to the discussion of appropriate parcel sizes for the Little Blacktail area is the availability of water. Or to put more accurately, the unavailability of water. Finding an adequate supply for the Little Blacktail Ranch Park was far more challenging than Dad had anticipated. For these and many other reasons, to deny the unwise rezoning of this 15-acre parcel, they deserve your thoughtful and thorough consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, any questions?
No?
Good, thank you.
I've got a PowerPoint. Okay. I don't know how to vote. Can you vote for PowerPoint? Up here? Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of a PowerPoint. Oh, it's in, okay. What's the name of your presentation?
Bonner County Commissioner, yeah.
Are you Nick?
Yep, that's
Okay. We gotta get up there, so give me just a second.
yeah.
I wish it was that quick.
It's okay. I'm glad I could get it on this and not have to stand on the,
You're
out
the
there
blue,
holding the laptop.
you're the blue one right here?
Yes, okay.
All right. You can use these,
Will it pull up the notes or?
you can use this to scroll through.
Okay.
You have
But it
notes on
won't,
here?
yeah, I have notes. Is there a way of doing that? If not, then I can wing it.
The answer is probably yes. Do I know how to do it? I'm not an IT guy.
I'm with you.
It only mirrors the screen.
It just mirrors, okay. No worries.
Okay, we'll go back to the share.
Yeah, just pull it up.
It's just mirroring the screen. You could just leave it. We can all see your notes. We'll be a little bit less impressed.
I worked hard on those notes.
Then we'll be more impressed. But if it only allows the mirroring,
That's fine.
you could put it that way, and then you'd be able to see it. I can look that way and still be impressed. Okay.
As long as you're impressed.
Ah,
Okay, we gotta,
Yeah.
do you want to try those notes or no?
No, this is just good.
Okay. No problem.
Okay, you see these here?
Typically. Okay. now
Awesome.
There we go.
Okay, great. My name is Mick Macera, and I'm a full-time resident of Bonner County. I have a bunch of donated minutes. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm the last speaker, I think, for our group. This is hopefully about 15 minutes, so it's not going to drag on forever, but for your expectations, that's kind of what I'm looking for.
all right.
Ready to go. No. So I appreciate your time today. Appreciate the commissioners, the planning committee, and the staff, and obviously all of my neighbors that have come here. They have selected me to kind of be the representative for a lot of them, and I'm honored to do so. Like I said, myself and my wife are full-time residents here in Bonner County, and we live in the Little Ranch Blacktail HOA. However, I am speaking for not just the HOA, but for landowners in the Carywood area, and I think outside the Carywood area into Bonner County, if others were aware of what's going on here today. You've seen some of the history of the area. I'm not going to read PowerPoints. It's not what I do. But you did hear some mention about 60 of the 61 lots qualifying for the timber production. If this rezoning were to go into effect, you're effectively taking 15 acres of timberland out of production, which is affecting the Bonner County economy. Also, there's only one lot that is under 6 acres. In the HOA, 75% of them are 8 acres or more. And as you've heard, when they were originally plotted, which is pre-2008 zoning, these lots, it was by terrain, it was by logging roads, and you know how, when you read terrain, what makes good barriers, ridgelines, streams, etc. That's how this is divided. As we get into this, we'll take a closer look at the property, which is the question today. Remember, all of this was done pre the R10 zoning. That's why you have some varying lots. In looking at the zoning commission staff report, there's some misrepresentations that are there. A lot of that's based on the original application from the applicant. The parcel is not accessed from a county road. It's accessed from East Ridge Road, which is an HOA road, which is an easement. There is no access from Little Blacktail Road to this property. And we can pull back up the map and I can show you, but you can see that there's no access. So you're accessing off of a private road. In addition, they're disregarding the 30% slope that's already on that property. The staff pointed it out that there is 30%, greater than 30% slope in there. When we look over the R10 matrix, which you've seen today, you're going to see there's different representations and different interpretations of that. And when you look at the services that are available, There are individual wells, we know there could be a question whether they hit water or not. You've heard that from our water district representative. So there's no guarantee they're gonna hit water when they subdivide this thing. The other side is the individual septics that they're planning for. The Panhandle Health could not come up with a comment because they didn't have a plat. There was no site plan for them to determine if you can put septics in there or not. Let's take a look at that letter. The applicant indicates an intention to divide 15-acre parent parcel into smaller parcels, which will be served by subsurface sewage disposal septics and individuals. PhD has not conducted site evaluation for proposed parcels. At this time, there's not enough information to determine whether the parcel will meet the standards. So the applicant is asking you to make a decision. Don't worry about it. We're going to get it fixed. We're okay. Panhandle Health saying, hey, don't put the cart before the horse. We need to get out there and look at it because that is a significant factor. Who wants to buy a 5-acre tract and can't put a septic in there or get a well? Now what you're doing there, in effect, is you're taking property rights from those buyers. If you allow this to happen, if you allow this to go on without the proper study. Continuing on with the staff report. This is not, a 5-acre tract is not in keeping with the integrity of the area. It's not even close. Not even close. There's one tract next to it that is now part of an other family homestead that's in excess of 15 acres. There's one tract that's 5 1/4 acres within the HOA due to the terrain, not because it was split that way, due to the terrain. I've already talked about how many lots are over 8 acres, are over 10 acres. Over half of the lots are over 10 acres. When we look at their finding of fact, it does have, the lot does have slopes that are greater than 30%. It's not vacant of 30%. There are red all over it. We'll look at it here in a minute. It doesn't meet the criteria of the R10. And I'm going to bring it up and we're going to go through it. The property is not accessed by a Bonner County road, which is in their findings, that it's accessed by a Bonner County road. It is not. That's a misrepresentation. There's no there in the staff report. There was no mention of this conditional zoning development agreement that it finally got mentioned today. I looked for it in the staff report. There was no mention. I'm glad it was mentioned, and I'm glad that we can start working through that issue if this were to get approved. The other sections, you see the sections below that I'm going to kind of touch on, some a little bit more deeper from the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan. This is the slope. We've seen this. Okay, you see the red. The red indicates greater than 30%. Now visualize 3 lots. I don't know how you're going to divide it where 2 of those lots would not be almost 25, 30, 40% of a 30% slope, which means they would have to be zoned R20 or R10. If you divide it, you're creating an R10 criteria on the division alone. So let's look at that, okay? But there is, I have done an analysis on that. I would say that's at least 25%, maybe 20% of 30-degree slope or more on that property. I'm not sure what indicates that there's no 30% as in that matrix. Here we are. Characterized by slopes over 30%. We just looked at it. Critical wildlife habitat, sure. And again, for the R10 standards, this isn't, you have to check them all. If one of those R10 standards is present, it is R10. By code, by statute, Idaho statute. Okay, so agricultural soils, absolutely. It's served by a public network, a public and private road network, okay? That private road does not meet Appendix A of Title 12. It's an old logging road that was just gravelled over. It does not meet the specifications of Appendix A of Title 12. That in itself, check it off, boom. We're at R10, right there. So you have 30% slope, check. We have a network that does not meet Title 12, and I'll agree with that on the floodway. But let's talk about that potential, the limited access to public services. Two public services are critical, water and sewer. We can't live without it. I mean, I guess you can dig an outhouse, but if you don't have water, what are you gonna do? Truck it in? You're gonna put a cistern in that property? Where? So that's three. I'll definitely say two positives and a third of potential. If you look at R5, does not meet the criteria for R10. Well, they do. This property in itself meets it. And then when you subdivide it, it creates even more of an R10. Zoning meets the criteria. Now, let's look at this site plan. We have an incomplete application that was submitted by the applicant to the zoning board and the planning board. This site plan does not contain a site, this is off the application, by the way. If you have to, when you submit an application for a rezoning, you have to have a site plan drawn to scale depicting the location of all buildings, parking, and load. We don't even have how they want to subdivide it. Again, cart before the horse. This is referenced back to the Panhandle Health District. They can't make a decision because there's no plan. Just trust me, I'm gonna make a plan. Just give me the blank check, I'm gonna make the plan. It's an incomplete application, not the zoning commission's and planning department's fault. This is what they received from the applicant. Agency letters, there's been some references to these agency letters. Not one, they talk about recommendations. There was not one recommendation from any agency that responded to approve this action. In fact, you had two negatives and one that couldn't comment, I've already talked about. DEQ and school district, they send a normal form letter. You guys have seen it probably 100 times. It's the same form letter.
Actually,
I'm sorry?
DEQ sent you a detailed letter, actually.
If I recall, the DEQ said they couldn't comment because there wasn't any, they didn't do a specific.
One was big.
You got one from DEQ. They actually gave some recommendations that actually,
I must have misread that then.
yeah,
I
no, they
apologize.
did give you some recommendations.
Okay, I'll have to look at that. I'll certainly go back and look at them
It's kind of in line with, there should be some confirmation before you move forward.
Yeah, the way I read it was that they were referring it like in generality that this is what they normally do. So that's why I may have termed it as a form letter. Because they weren't specifically addressing this 15-acre plot. They were kind of saying, we normally don't comment on this. That's how I took it in the form letter. So I may have misrepresented that and I apologize. But the road and bridge certainly was specific. Panhandle Health was certainly specific. We already talked about that. And Idaho Department of Fish and Game, you already heard some mention of that from Christine. And you heard some of the sub-area comprehensive plans from Tess. I want to comment on this, that this in itself, separate from this rezoning issue, this may be something we need to look at as a county. Because I do think we're opening up the county to a due process issue under the 5th and 14th Amendment, because there is a significant portion of the county that did not have the input that these other areas did. So separate issue, but I do something that I think you all need to look at as the commissioners, because it's something that, and the planning commission, I think that should be something that's addressed. But I didn't want to bring it up in this forum.
I'm glad you did it.
Thank you. So let's talk about the comprehensive plan. I'm going to get into some detail on this. The common theme throughout the comprehensive plan is maintain the rural character of Bonner County. I mean, it's throughout. And this is throughout too. Impacts on other properties should be taken into account. The property owner of the one requesting the zoning change, their property rights are the same as ours, as adjacent property owners. We all have the same property rights. So our property rights need to be taken into account, or you're running into a taking, which we don't want to get into, okay? The land use, same thing. Same thing under the land use of the comprehensive plan. And this is your guiding documents. We all know this. It values timberland and protects water resources. You've heard testimony already about water resources, how fragile they are, and what kind of problem could be created within this subdivision. Under the transportation, now we're going to get very specific. Provide transportation system that's safe, uncongested, and well-maintained, and should not adversely impact the existing transportation. And inadequate transportation should be discouraged, right? Let's look at the letter, the email from the road department, Road Bridge Department, okay? In 2018, 5 years ago, not a week ago when Ms. Kruger talked to him, or 2 weeks ago, 5 years ago, there were 339 cars a day. Does anybody in this room believe that there's more than 339 cars going down Little Blacktail right now? Absolutely. At 250 cars, they're saying, hey, hard surface could be justified at great expense. So we're already there. This is within their letter. And as it says, this is very specific. It doesn't say possibly. It says additional vehicles added at this point will, not possible, will have a negative impact on existing residents. That's everyone in this room minus a few people. There will be a negative impact on our property rights, which equals a taking. Let's talk about community design, maintaining the rural character. Okay? The adverse impacts of new development in adjacent areas should be minimized. My entire presentation so far has been nothing but adverse impacts on the community, on not just Little Blacktail HOA, but the entire Carywood area. You've heard spot zoning already. This is the definition of spot zoning. The process of singling out a small parcel of land for use classification totally different from that of the surrounding area for the benefit of the owner of such property and to the detriment of others. Hello, this is where we're at. This is exactly what we're talking about. Now let's take a look here. This is a map of the area with the zoning. That dark blue swath right there is R10. That's a 96 square mile map of Bonner County. 96 square miles. Does anybody, light blue is an R5. There is not one R5 in 96 square miles. And in order for something to be not spot zoning, it has to be not arbitrary, and there has to be a public benefit. It's defined in statute. There must be a public benefit. Well, let's look at this. Does that look like spot zoning if you turn that one little blob, that little red dot to blue, to a light blue?
Yep.
Spot zoning. Where's the public benefit of turning that light blue? There isn't one. You've heard a little bit about precedent. It's a slippery slope. You start this, there's no stopping it. The cascade of rampant speculation and development will swarm over this county, particularly the southern reaches of this county, because we're closer to Coeur d'Alene, we're closer to Athol. The speculators, the developers, will be looking for this property, and they will point to this ruling. They will point to this ruling as their open ticket to come in and buy it up and subdivide it. That's what we're seeing. The applicant themselves admits it twice in their application that this will be precedent setting. The zoning commission staff says it will increase development. Fish and Game reference it in their letter. The schools reference it. The road departments references it in their email as well. Let's look at the application. This is from the application. This is the applicant's words. The approval of this rezone could allow the potential for future subdivision allowed. There it is. Could allow for future subdivision. We all know could, it means will when it comes to any type of rezone. The rezone of this property could also potential for subdivision in the future. There's that would, it could again. Would, it could, it should, it's will. There's no question what will happen if this is allowed to occur. Here's Fish and Game. While this request may be small, we're concerned about the cumulative effects of the similar requests of the subsequent development that occurs if they are approved. While any one development proposal will have limited impacts on wildlife, those impacts will add cumulatively to the impacts associated with future developments. Future developments. That's what this is about. This is about the future. Yeah, it's about today. It's about one piece of property. It's about the future of Bonner County. What our county will look like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 100 years from now. It starts right here. This action must be denied. For us, for our grandchildren, for all of us. Property rights, it's a two-way street. I have property rights the same as Mr. Monty does. These actions infringe on my property rights. It becomes a taking on all of our property rights. And that's why we're here today. When I bought my property, I knew it was R10. That's what I wanted. Mark talked about it. Everyone in this room, we bought our property. We voted, as Tess said, with our wallet. We paid for our property, knowing what was going to be, and we trusted Bonner County government to withhold that, to keep our values, because that's what we purchased. Mr. Monty bought this property knowing it was R10. Knowing it. He knew right away. It doesn't hide. Look at the map. You can't just buy a piece of property, come in, and say, well, I'm going to change it. This property does not meet the criteria of R5 under Title 12, 323. I went over that. It doesn't. Again, open to interpretation, but it does not. This is clearly a spot zoning that cannot be supported by a public benefit, which this opens up the county to litigation, because it would be an illegal spot zoning. I don't know how clear that map could be. I don't know where the public benefit is. I'm not sure. And this sets precedent to open the subdivision and speculation throughout not just Carywood, but throughout all of Bonner County. And what we have is a company, an LLC, that is not of Bonner County, that has come in and bought property in Bonner County, and now wants to speculate and make money in Bonner County and then run off to the next piece of property. And infringing upon and taking the property rights of Bonner County residents. It cannot stand. It cannot stand. I implore you to deny this rezoning. There are legal reasons and there are the right reasons. And in this case, sometimes, in a lot of cases, that doesn't equal the legal and the right. In this situation, it's clearly the right thing to do and the legal thing to do. I appreciate the time. It's subject to your questions. And I'm a little bit passionate. I'm sorry.
I picked up on that. Just a wee bit.
You guys definitely picked good people to speak on your behalf. I don't have questions for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public? Yes, sir.
Less than 3 minutes.
Okay.
Please excuse the tremors, Parkinson's.
Name for the record.
My name is Mike Tinsley. We're in the lot to the east of this proposed property division, 10.47 acres there. And then some of the things a couple of things, boy, they touched on so many things. They did such an excellent job. A couple of things that we were a little bit noting. In the original meeting that they had, they brought up the forestry department consult. They said no more than a maximum of 2 parcels there, and that was their feedback. And this is what we had in the previous meeting at that, and that should be on the record. It wasn't brought up. The last thing is the impact on that road. Everybody's showing coming off of Evans Landing and accessing all the 3 proposed parcels. It's definitely going to turn up East Ridge Road. We're right at the very end of that, next to the hiking trail. We get a tremendous amount of traffic in there. The highest number of cars we've ever seen was 26. This last weekend was 16 in there. With the addition of these, we're going to have access not only off of East Ridge Road, but Evans Landing as well. So it'll impact both of those roads, and we're having to upkeep all of that. But that's the only other additional things I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'm going to.
All righty.
I'm Linda Tinsley, my wife, and as far as the HOA rules that we have, that is so that people can't put whatever they want to on the property and keep it up to the standards that, and sometimes there are more assessments than others because sometimes we have a lot more snow and all of us we all are together to pay for all this. And that's why, that was the most important thing. You can't cherry pick those homeowners association. You're either for them or you're against them, but you can't pick them apart. Okay? That's all I have. And I was under.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Oh, anybody else? Yeah, I believe at this time we have applicant. Oh, we got somebody online?
Just one online, no hand raised.
Okay. Light them up.
No hand
Never mind.
raised.
Not hand raised.
Okay. The quiet type, no doubt. So at this time, we'll have a rebuttal from the applicant.
Do you need my name for the record again?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Connie Kruger for the record. Okay. Well, there's a lot of information that was provided, so I'm going to try to hit on as much as I possibly can. So informationally, I'd like to provide a little bit of information for the county commissioners. I'm a former county and city planning director. I've worked in 2 states and 4 different cities, 3 of those cities as a community development director, overseeing building, planning, engineering. So I very much have sat with planning commissions and county commissioners as staff, providing guidance and making, these decisions, and have participated in, I believe, over 6,000 public hearings is what I counted at one point in time, because I've been doing this for a long, long time. And so I understand, how people feel about their neighborhoods. I feel about, I really do understand this. I feel the same way about my own neighborhood that I'm in, and development that's occurred around me. So I just want to recognize that I want to lay that foundation, because I'm going to come back and I'm going to approach this a little bit more technically. But I do understand, the feelings that are in the room, and I think that Mr. Monty does too. But with that said, I'm going to probably approach my comments a little bit more from that perspective as a former community development director overseeing planning, building, and engineering. So a couple of points that I'd like to make. First is that when Idaho Code, the Land Use Planning Act, really lays out the groundwork for a community to develop their comprehensive plan and to develop their own zoning ordinances. And it actually was developed to require that communities develop those ordinances. So with that, you're given, certain elements that you're required to address within your comprehensive plan. And always within a comprehensive plan, you'll have lots of different goals and policies, because they develop and support a variety of community viewpoints. With that, you then usually take that information and you go out and you develop your land use map. And so I don't have access to the future land use map for the county, and I don't see one in the room. But in this case, if you were to look at the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan future land use map, you would see a wide variety of land uses that are planned throughout the community, including lands that are specifically for forest, specifically for rural areas, specifically for urban areas. This area is an area that is planned more for rural development. It's not planned for active ag, for active forestry, those types of things. When Mike Monty looks at a piece of property, when other people look at a piece of property, they look at that land use map, because that land use map provides predictability for them. They meet with staff, they look at the guidelines on when a rezone may be possible, and they make decisions related to that. It doesn't mean there's a guarantee as to the outcome, but part of the value that a comprehensive plan and a future land use map bring, along with those land characteristics, is that it makes that more predictable for people. When people buy into an HOA, you're not really buying into the zoning, you're buying into the HOA documents and whatever the approved lot sizes are and things like that. So you're really looking more at those documents themselves. So this little lot that's kind of sandwiched off, by itself, is kind of, it's got this HOA, it's got all this public land around it. It's different, it's a little bit unique. We heard a lot of testimony today about, kind of runaway precedent and concerns with that. And a lot of the public land or the Stimson land that was discussed today, those are large land holdings. And if you were to look at the comprehensive plan, likely they have a different land use designation that wouldn't allow them to apply for zoning of this size. But also, even if it did allow for that, they would still have to go through a rezone process. They would have to come before the zoning commission. They would have to come before the county commissioners. And the county commissioners would need to make decisions based on those same criteria. So that would be evaluated independently at the time. And I would imagine that if Stimson came in with a section of land, 640 acres, and they asked you to rezone it, a lot of these concerns related to water, sewer, would be very enhanced given the size of the land. We're here talking about a 15-acre land holding that is rectilinear, so it wasn't carved out as a unique circular, angular property. It kind of is what it is. Any future lots that are created will be shaped by the development codes that the county has on the books. And so there are requirements for riparian area setbacks. If a wetland is found on the site, a wetland study would need to be done. And those types of things can and do ultimately shape what a subdivision looks like. We're not applying for a subdivision, we're applying for a rezone. And there's a reason why in our application materials you don't see details. And one is that the county's application does not require it. But two, it's because these subsequent processes have their own way of shaping and filtering the shape of the number of lots that you ultimately have. I'd like to address spot zoning. I've been, again, in many meetings like this over the years, and people bring up spot zoning. And on its face, it's pretty simple. You look at, a little rectangle and you say, yep, that's a spot, that's a zone. The reality of it is that this is really more about introducing an industrial area into a residential area. If you were never to have a spot zone, you would never have, or a discrete piece of property that changes, you would never have zoning change in an area. And I would tell you that, again, this is a unique area. It's isolated. It's not part and parcel of a larger area where it will have this rippling effect. It's in its own little area. And again, it meets the intent of the comprehensive plan and the future land use map. One of the things that was brought up was the site plan, and that we didn't have information that was required by code. Site plans are used for commercial development. They're used sometimes for residential development, and they are a site plan related to development. And so if you look at the information that they're asking you for traffic, they're asking you for building areas, they're asking you for circulation. None of those are proposed at this point in time. The subdivision would be the tool that we would use to accomplish that. And we would look at driveways, we would look at critical areas, we would look at a host of other things. Again, limiting factors that help you with your design. A site plan is really related more to creating a commercial site out, downtown or something like that. And typically those are tied to building permits. Moving on to the agency comments. Again, in the work that I've done, I've seen both in the public sector as well as in the private sector, I've seen these comments that come in from the agencies. And largely, they tend to be awkwardly worded. Sometimes you're not sure, is it a template letter, is it not? If you don't see them on the regular, it may not, make a lot of sense. I would say that I want to address the Panhandle Health District letter. I've seen a letter very similar to this with other rezone applications. And basically what they're saying is hey, you have a rezone. You're not applying for the type of application at this point in time that we would comment on. we would comment on this at the point in time that we have this information. And again, Panhandle Health has acknowledged that that information comes along with the plating process. I did hit earlier in my presentation on the comments that were received from Roads and Bridges. And again, when I saw that comment and it was provided to you here in writing and it was highlighted, I was alarmed. And I contacted Roads and Bridges and I said, can you tell me more? You know, what's the concern here? You know, sometimes when people come and they talk to the planning department, they don't get that feedback from Roads and Bridges. And so we did do additional follow-up, and the initial comment was, yeah, we're not really sure, we haven't been out there for a long time. We just kind of provided that comment. They like to see the worst case scenario. That's what they said. I mean, I'm not making it up. That was basically what they said. And then as we talked about it further, I asked questions, where on Little Blacktail Road are these concerns? And they said, well, we'd really have to get out there and look. But then I asked, can you plow? Can you do these things? Yes, you can. Moving on to slope. When there was a discussion here about what differentiates between an R10 and an R5 zone district. And a map was provided which showed little areas with slope that were above 30%. Again, not uncommon to see that within an area like this, where you'd have a parcel and you'd have some degree of slope on that. The code actually states characterized by. It doesn't say 10%, 20%, 30%. Typically, the word characterize means that there's a predominant feature in the area. And so, again, looking back to the maps, we didn't see that 30% slope was a predominant feature on that property. There was a comment about access to Little Blacktail Road. I'm not sure. I think it may have been in reference to the staff report. I think the staff, we were very clear in our presentation. We understand that we're accessing directly onto East Ridge, which is a private road. We described some of the characteristics of East Ridge and the proximity over to Little Blacktail, which is a public road. Again, it may have been, maybe a little bit more in another document that was seen. A reference was made to Idaho Code and a statement about zoning districts and how you can't establish different standards within a zone district. And you can't. In an R5 zone district, you can't have an R5 zone district where you allow a 25-foot setback, 10 front yard setback, 10-foot side yard setbacks, and a 30-foot rear yard setback, and then have another contradictory standard in the same zone code. That's what Idaho Code is telling you. That section of Idaho Code is not dealing with rezones. You clearly have the authority to rezone, and you're supposed to rezone in accordance with your comprehensive plan. And as far as I'm aware, there aren't contradictory standards within the zoning district itself of Bonner County. There was a discussion about the desire to plan more for this area. I think that leads into this whole, greater discussion about Stimson, other large land holdings. Is this precedent setting? I don't personally believe it is, because I think it's isolated and findings related to consistency with comp plan and zoning can be made. But if there are concerns in areas like that, sub-area planning can and should take place. I don't know what was involved in the current comprehensive plan, but often it's applications like this that bring people to the table with, concern about their area. And it does lead to, good discussions and sometimes revised comprehensive plans, revised zoning codes. A reference was made to Bonner County Code stating that lot sizes smaller than the minimum lot size shall not be used to justify a smaller lot size. We did provide you an example of a 5-acre lot next to us. We provided you with examples of 6, 7, 8-acre lots and so on. Our primary discussion points were not around the 5-acre lot that's next to us. And there are a variety of other factors that need to be taken into consideration, both in the way that rezone criteria is structured under the county code and within, that this lies within the context of the comprehensive plan. There was discussion about a second stream being present in a wetland. And again, for this level of application, typically you don't do that level of analysis. But if a subdivision were to move forward, you would do that. And if there's a wetland present, we would need to do a wetland delineation report. I have done them here in Bonner, and I've worked with the staff on that a number of times. So I think those are my primary points, and Mr. Monty may want to say something too. I'm not sure if he does or not as part of the rebuttal. Is that okay? If he does, sure. Okay, maybe just a explanation.
Commissioners, my name's Michael Monty, for the record, born and raised right here in North Idaho. The situation we have in front of us, certainly a concern about the road. As the planning department wanted us to, was out of good faith on both parties, look at an agreement for the road situation. I have tried that, reaching out multiple times. They didn't even want to see a potential road agreement, wouldn't even want to get an email copy. Never was it discussed about the HOA between the planning department in the first hearing. I'm here to personally say that I will join the HOA if that's what it's going to take, essentially. The road is what was the main concern. And that's, again, going back onto what the planning department and we had in our first.
It's the water.
It's the water. Well, if you all recall from the last hearing.
So I'm going to ask just to address us, and
Thank
then
you very much.
you guys had your spot. I know it's tough, but he gets to do his part.
Thank you.
Nope,
No.
please.
Nope.
Okay.
In the last
His turn to speak.
Yeah, the last time I had, as far as contacted the Water Association, there was an abundance of water. Never was it once brought up close to a year ago about that. So this is news to me that we all of a sudden don't have water out there. It was previously stated in the last hearing that there was a good amount of water and only so many landowners were utilizing the water district up there. So news to me about the water is now all of a sudden not available up there. But going back onto the road that I was trying to discuss, the planners, anonymous, they all approved it. They said, this is great. Let's just make an agreement with the HOA as far as the road. I've tried to do that out of good faith, and it seems they're not going to anywhere other than join the HOA. So commissioners, I will tell you, if since that's the question here, we'll join the HOA. It's respecting your guys' properties, your neighbor. You don't want something, right now I don't have part of your HOA. I got to utilize your road. That's great. That's how I bought the property. You guys will have new members, dues, the road. Right now I don't pay for that road. You guys do a great job upkeeping it. You'll have 2 to 3 new people paying into this road association and HOA. Let's call it the HOA. But I have no further comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, planning, you got anything?
Only if the commissioners have questions.
There was a reference to Idaho Code 67-6511. All that from,
I do recall that.
can you address that?
I
For my
cannot, I
edification.
figure Bill, I don't know where he disappeared to.
Oh, he ran away.
Probably address that better than I probably could.
Thank you for that.
Since I'm not an expert in the state code.
All right. Thank you, Daniel.
You're welcome.
So at this point, I'll close all comment and we will deliberate amongst ourselves.
So I think there is a problem with Bonner County and I talked with Bill about this, hopefully he comes back, we can't require them to make an agreement with an HOA because we're
Right.
not in charge of the third party. So the focus of this file has to be on the merits of what the request is, not any type of agreement between them because we don't get to do that. So are we in agreement that that's the position of the
Yeah,
board?
not in favor of a development agreement.
Okay. So in this particular case, there was a lot of comments that were given back, and we'll start with one of the easy ones for me. Let's look at the R10 to R5. There, in my view of this file, there are elements that make this an R10. We are saying it can be R5 to R10, but there is limited access to public services. It is served by a network of public and private roads, and there are slopes on this particular piece of land. And so it's not mischaracterized, in my opinion, as an R10. I think I'll always maintain an issue with the idea of critical wildlife habitat, only because Fish and Game has indicated that all of Bonner County has this as a concern, and we have to look at each individual parcel. When you look at Fish and Game's review of this particular file, they were very detailed. And one of the things that they point out is that even though this is a small piece that you're trying to break up, there is impact to the habitat. And I think that that requires us to take a look at that impact. And so Fish and Game stated that where there's lower density development, it will reduce potential impacts of resources. Residential development is permitted in these areas at a density of 5 and 10 acres. While the habitat contained in the parcel is not currently designed as critical by the state or federal agency, and that is the requirement that we have, with a increased development at a maximum density, all undeveloped wildlife habitat and open spaces within Bonner County are becoming increasingly important. It further noted that the application did not identify a stream, and Idaho Fish and Game found that statement regarding that to be erroneous and located the unnamed tributary that bisects the property. They continued on, and the gentleman who gave the presentation identified their concerns of just the increased density on the lots itself. And so when you look at Fish and Game, they're clearly telling us that the reduction does have a negative impact, even though it's not deemed critical. We are having a negative impact on the habitat. There is a stream there, and we're moving it, we're lowering the density. So what are your thoughts on Fish and Game's report? I think maybe if we go like report by report, we'll do a good job of assessing this file.
I agree with Fish and Game that even though it's a small piece, it certainly opens the door or sets precedents for future smaller pieces, which would affect that area, and I'm very familiar with that area. The water is an issue over there. I know people that lived all through that area from Maiden Rock area all the way down to Granite Hill along that lake. And some have a wealth of waters. Some spend a wealth and get no water. And simply because that's just the way it is there. You look at, I think it's a perfect example of what a spot zone would be. If you look at it, and the closest R5 to it is a long ways away. And so it's not a fit for the area for me. And I would rule according to that. I just don't see it as a good ideal. And one of the things I'll mention that has nothing to do with my decision, but I'm going to mention it because when people come here and present things to us, whether it's the planning department, an applicant, legal representative, whoever it may be, when they come and state a fact and think that we won't think about it, that they know is not true, I have a hard time digesting that. And when someone comes and tells me they've said it's 6,000 hearings, one a day, 5 days a week would be 115 years. 5 a week would be 23 and a half years. that you said in a hearing every day. And so sometimes facts are threw out there that aren't really facts, they're more of a smokescreen, and that really insults the intelligence of this board. And I would advise against that in the future, because some of the things we hear, we really do digest. We don't just sit up here and not listen and pay attention. But for me, that just agitates the heck out of me when somebody thinks we're that silly and we're not paying attention. But it is not a fit for Bonner County, and it's certainly not a fit for that area. And for me, that would be the perfect example of a spot zone.
I have quite a few kind of issues with the request, and I will tell you, I've been working with PhD in the Panhandle Health District. When they tell you that they're needing you to actually test, it's not a canned, and I'm actually going to be working with them tomorrow on how we present this. What they're telling you is that they cannot guarantee anything without actually doing the work. And one of the requests is that should Bonner County change the way in which we are making these changes so that when they give us an answer, it's based on fact and not, we'll know when you do it. So and when I go over to the DEQ side, I've been looking at working with that group as well to make sure we're getting quality information. And in their case, they're actually making a comment about doing a test because of water issues and concerns. And I note in the applicant file, there's a little bit of a pivot as if they could potentially use the communal water, but not being part of an HOA. And that's typically not how that works. And we can't dictate that. I can only look at it as this particular parcel is not part of the HOA. So I can't make a decision that they can use the water source on the other side. And in the DEQ response, they're giving a recommendation because of a concern of water. When I look at this particular file, it does meet Rule 10. It is there is character slopes. It is arguably served by a network of both public and private, and there is limited access to public services. When I look at the spot zoning comment, one of the things that this one is kind of unique in that we're going to go from the 15 to the 5, and actually, when I think I heard her mention it, that you're losing some of the value of the land when you reduce it because of the timber exemption. And so when you're looking at the rule of, spot zoning, characteristically, then the change would make it not mirror what the area is. And that's what we would actually be doing by changing it. And then you were changing the resources. And it's not that we can tell someone you must develop timber. It then further highlights that it would not mirror the community that is currently there. And I think that's probably why I'm kind of on the same side of Commissioner Bradshaw, that we would be using one parcel to change it, which is not in line with the community as a whole. But one of the other things is it wasn't just DEQ and Panhandle Health. The school had some negative comments, which I don't know that we can even require what they asked for.
Let's not.
So I'm pretty sure we don't get to extort money from that was pretty significant, but it matters in that essentially my takeaway from their request is it will impact the community that in such a way that the community needs to be made whole. We cannot do that. Therefore, the question is that negative to the community? Not that we can make you pay secretly for a service. So some of what has been suggested is not the power of a commissioning. All we can do is say, does it meet it? And for me, this is Rule 10, and the area is, and the change actually removes the characteristics of the area and has greater negative impacts to the surrounding community. I can't tell you you're going to get water or not get water, or sewer or not get sewer. I can tell you that I can't say they have access to your plan. For me, this is not in line with the comp plan and the sub-area plans because it does take away all of the characteristics of the area for one particular owner, and that's in part what we're not supposed to do, make decisions in favor of one.
I'd entertain a motion unless you got something.
Oh, wait, I was just listening, but I agree with much of what was said. I actually believe, though, that this is a taxing district for the water area, so there would be access. Also, as an aside, it would actually be to the county's benefit financially, I believe, that if we were to go down to 5s. I'm opposed. This does contain slopes of 30% or greater. The intermittent stream that was referenced by Idaho Fish and Game, we don't have a 7.5. So you either got 10s or 5s. It appears to me that 10s much better fit. A big concern that I do have is the impact upon transportation. And it is clearly in line with the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan goals and objectives in reference to transportation, in that future development shall not adversely impact the existing transportation system by reducing the quality or level of service or creating roads or congestion. The lack of a acceptance between the HOA and the applicant is a concern for me, which makes me unable to want to change the zoning at this time. And Road and Bridges comments were the ones that were published in the file, which are the ones that I am going to make my decision upon, were clear. So.
Need a motion?
I would take a motion.
All right. I move to deny this project file ZC 0018-22 requesting a zone change from Rural 10 to Rural 5 based upon the following conclusions. Can I just say refer to the list, Bill?
Yep.
I don't want to say the whole list.
Sorry, would you repeat the question?
Can I just say refer to the list, or do you want me to list all of the conclusions?
Yeah, as stated in the staff report.
Okay, as stated in the staff report, the project conclusions of law and specify which conclusions project meets to fail or fails to meet. The decision is based upon the evidence submitted up to the time the staff report was prepared and testimony received at this hearing. I further move to adopt why is this not word? Doesn't sound right. Because
Maybe an either or.
well, maybe they needed an either or. Okay, sure. Alrighty. I instruct the staff to draft conclusions of law set forth in the staff report and direct planning staff to draft written findings and conclusions to reflect this motion, have chairman sign and transmit all interested parties. This action does not result in a taking of private property. The action that could be taken, if any, to obtain the zone change is to, 1, file a new application with the planning department and meet the standards required by Bonner Code Revised Code, or pursue such remedies as may be applicable at Title 67, Chapter 65, Idaho Code.
I second the motion.
Roll call vote?
Commissioner Ahmed?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes?
Commissioner Redmond?
Yes. And we will conclude that file, and we will go into file number AM 0008.
We'll let these people try. I don't think they want to stay any longer.
Do we, Mr. Chairman,
Unless
can
y'all
we
want to
have,
stay for the fun?
can we have a recess?
Okay, how
Maybe a
about
5-minute
at
recess?
15:36, we'll take a 5-minute recess.
Well, taxation would have been for me to vote the other way. Yes. Yes, when we do an exemption in Hudson County, it's a shift. It's a shift. I voted against taxes. I voted financially against the county. But that's okay. That's the way, that had nothing to do with it. I just wanted, the tax exemption, you might know my dad from the Forestry Association.
Are we ready?
We are ready now.
Okay, it is, geez, a weasel, it's already 3:43, and we will come back out of recess. We will hear file AM 0008-23. And here's Swati.
No,
We're on
6.
6-23.
We're going what?
6-23 is first?
Oh, there's one in front of it.
Yeah, there's 2 in front of
I
us.
didn't turn back far enough. Okay. AM 623. Now, Swati, you may fire it.
Okay, good afternoon, Commissioners. We are here to consider the amendment to the comprehensive plan, the agricultural component of it. The file was duly noticed. According to the state code, several agencies were notified on April 20, 2023. This is the huge list of agencies that were notified of this request.
What type of list is that again?
Huge list.
Thank you.
Most of the agencies replied with no comments. Then there is one agency that replied with a comment that is not particularly relevant to the text amendment, but I can bring up that comment on the screen in a moment. And the agency that commented is TC Energy. They hadn't commented till till the staff report was written, so sort of a late comment, but if you would like to see the comment, here it is. Please make sure any work going on in TC Energy's GTN right of way is witnessed by TC Energy employees not relevant to the amendment to the agricultural component of the comprehensive plan. Any ground disturbance in TC Energy's right of way needs to have a TC Energy personnel on site. Any kind of encroachment or crossing will need to be approved by TC Energy before beginning work, and please contact me below if you have any questions or comments. So none of these are relevant to the file at hand. We received some public comments on this file, which were received during the planning workshops consideration of the file, but Planning Commission's consideration of the file during their workshop. We did not receive any comments during their hearing, and we did not receive any comments from the public for the board's hearing as well. So the component was first adopted in 2013, and since then, no updates were made to the component. The file was considered by the Planning Commission in several workshops and their own hearing, and then it was again heard by the board on 27th April, and now we are having a hearing on May 24th. According to the state code, this is what the state code requires. An analysis of the agricultural base of the area, including agricultural lands, farming activities, farming related businesses, and the role of agriculture and agricultural uses in the community. I will go over the Planning Commission's recommendation was unanimous with a 7-0 vote on April 4, and I will go over the component quickly. So basically, the component discusses the total number of farms in Bonner County by value, size, acreage, by sales value, and basically the trends of farms in Bonner County, which shows that there's been an increase in the small acreage farming in Bonner County. But I don't have a lot to discuss here. It was brought to the board, like I said, it was brought to the board in a public workshop as well prior to this hearing. So if the board has any questions about it, I can answer those questions.
I have no questions.
Not in area one.
I don't have any questions.
So that concludes the presentation for this particular file, but I can probably take public comments at this point, I guess.
Oh,
Public comment? You want to be public? How about you, Randy? You want to be public?
I've given all my comments about this previously.
thank
Okay.
you.
Well, if that's the way you feel about it. All right, I'd entertain a motion.
Well, let me just do a little spiel because a lot of people did write on this and they asked us to review certain stuff. And so I did look at the economic impacts of climate change on agriculture based on the University of Idaho study. I didn't see where what was written was inconsistent. It just doesn't mention it, and we can't mention everything that's occurring. It was just basically a 1 degree temperature change. The other question that came up was, are we going to continue to use a soil standard for agriculture by saying prime ag soils because it creates some confusion or there's only a little bit or not, but I didn't see where the amendment was outside of that aspect of it either. And I thought that Lynn Scott did a really good job with that NRCS because I think I emailed you and said thank you for that work that you did on that because it was very explanatory. So with all the comments that came through, I didn't see where there was anything inconsistent with the information. I think sometimes people want us to add a lot more information into a section than we need to. So thank you for all of that, for all the people that actually wrote a comment and then for Lynn Scott doing the work on that section. So, but I did read their economic impact study.
Well, I believe the soil is going to be in the natural resource component, correct? And the
Correct.
soil and slope, so it'll be addressed.
Yeah. Matt Linscott for the record. Yes, we're gonna go ahead and put soils in the natural resource component. There's been some discussion whether we want to go ahead and include the soils. There's been public comment that we should not be making land use decisions on soils. We haven't come to that discussion yet.
Yeah.
It's also information that's currently in our comprehensive plan supplied by NRCS and information that recently supplied. There's some questions we have for NRCS. I believe we're going to meet with them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll have an NRCS representative in the next planning commission meeting. She'll be attending. She's new to the area, so she may not be able to comment on the component as of now, but she's willing to come and meet. And I think subsequently, once she gets to know the comprehensive plan in Bonner County, and I guess she would have more comments for us, and we'd invite her again to the meetings.
Okay.
Resolution number be 41 on that next motion.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the recommended updates to the agriculture component of the comprehensive plan, file AM 0006-23, as presented or as amended in this hearing, finding that it is in accord with the requirements of Idaho Code 67-6508 and the procedures of Idaho Code 67-6509. This action does not result in a taking of private property.
I second the motion.
Roll call vote?
Commissioner Ahmed?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Bradshaw?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I further move to approve resolution number 23-41, adopting the recommended updates to the agriculture component of the comprehensive plan, file AM 0006-23, repealing the previously adopted agriculture component of the comprehensive plan.
I second the motion.
Roll call vote?
Commissioner Ahmed?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Bradshaw?
Yes, ma'am. Got 2 Two more.
There's no more motions in this file, right? Yeah,
Okay.
we're done with
No.
motions.
Well, okay, so that's when they're to amend the recommended, okay, we didn't amend nothing. Okay. Next, AM triple out 8-23.
So Commissioners, we are now looking at an amendment to the comprehensive plan for the economic development section. Again, the file was duly noticed according to the state code requirements. Several agencies were notified on April 20th. Most replied with no comments. We didn't receive any comments for this one. And there were no public comments received either during the workshops or the Planning Commission hearing or the board's hearing. The component was first adopted in 2002. It hasn't been updated since. During this update, the Planning Commission gathered comments during several workshops and their own public hearing, and then it was brought to BOCC on April 27th in a workshop, and now we are hearing the file today in a public hearing setting. According to Idaho Code, this is what the state code requires: an analysis of the economic base of the area, including employment, industries, economies, jobs, and income levels. All of these have been addressed in the proposed update, and the Planning Commission recommends an approval, a unanimous approval. I can go over to the component now. So it talks about labor force, demographics, employment trends, economic sectors and employers in Bonner County, commuting patterns, strength and challenges facing Bonner County, and some summary of the economic development policies from the sub-area plans. That is basically it. If the commission has any question, I can answer the questions.
So on this one, I struggled with why we're updating it when we give a disclaimer that it's not, that we don't have good information on that. I think it's on page 2. It says a more detailed breakdown of educational attainment only for those in the workforce would be useful to develop a better understanding of the county's economic potential, because it agrees that it didn't use the best data in order to establish that. So is there a reason that we're not just going to get the data that would make the table useful, because it's not an accurate representation?
Commissioner, it's the lack of data that is not available that we can't make up as such. It's easy to look at county specific data for components like housing, but it's not possible to do that for educational attainment.
I'm talking about labor workforce. So it said, the way it says it should be noted that the data on education included ages 65 and older. So you're saying we wouldn't have the data to?
We won't have county specific data, if that's what we're looking for.
Not something we normally track.
I believe this data is aggregated primarily through the census, and the
Through the
census and
census,
the
It's the best available source of data we have.
So we wouldn't look at our county specifically through the?
We cannot, because when census uses the data, they look at the county as a whole, including all cities and everything. They don't exclude the data for the county separately.
Why would it? But you could use an aggregate, which is.
It gives the impression that there's a way to get to a better answer the way this is written, by saying it actually tells you that it would be better, so that if you're saying that's all that you can do, then I guess that's the answer. But
I have no further questions. Actually, I take that back. So we had our presentation from Panhandle Health last week, and they had county data demonstrating that it showed 4%, and that was based on Idaho Tax Commission statistics. But this is census. Has that pretty much been the statistical source throughout? Are we sticking with census or Idaho Tax?
there are different sources of data for different components. For example, for economic development data, you would probably refer to Bureau of Labor Statistics or
So national. Okay,
the best available source of data for different components.
thank you. I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the recommended updates to the economic development component of the comprehensive plan file AM0008-23 as presented or as amended in this hearing, finding that it is in accord with the requirements of Idaho Code 67-6508 and the procedures of Idaho Code 67-6509. This action does not result in a taking of private property.
I second the motion.
Roll call vote.
Commissioner Ahmed,
Yes?
Commissioner Williams,
I'm going to abstain.
Commissioner Bradshaw.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I further move to approve resolution number 23-42, adopting the recommended updates to the economic development component of the comprehensive plan, file AM0008-23, and repealing the previously adopted economic development component of the comprehensive plan.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, did we ask for public comments on this one?
Oh, I don't know if we did. Is there anybody in the public who would like to comment? Or?
Just to be honest.
Is there a second?
Oh, I second the motion.
Okay, roll call vote.
Commissioner Ahmed,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Williams,
Abstain.
Commissioner Bradshaw.
Okay, yes. I don't want to get hit, so I'll just go ahead.
No, I should have just asked.
Okay.
I was making a call on it.
And then we will go to Appeal BLP 2023-0353.
So before you have a request for essentially a refund for BLP 2023-0353. So county code does not allow refunds essentially once it's been per BCRC 11-108C. Essentially when someone's paid for and the file's been deemed complete, we don't have the option to then refund it. So in the Title 11 fee schedule, there's an option for appeal of fees, and there's no charge for that appeal fee. So that's essentially what they've asked for, is a refund. The only thing we've spent time on in this file is receiving it, inputting it into the computer, and as soon as we input it and started to process it, before we took any additional time on it, some change of life, some as detailed by the applicant there, occurred, and then they are now saying, hey, we're not going to build now, can we please get a refund of those fees?
And you recommend that, you would recommend the position of the applicant?
If I had the authority to refund it, I would have.
That's a pretty good recommendation.
Are we,
I'm
any
prepared to make,
discussion?
well,
Oh, I wasn't sure if we're gonna.
Any public
oh,
comment?
do we need a,
Anybody volunteering to pay them or?
All right. I move to approve this request for a full refund of building location fees to Gerald and Sherry Wallace regarding file ending in 0353 in the amount of $830 and void file ending 0353. A new building location permit and associated fees will be required for any future structure.
I second the motion.
Roll call vote.
Commissioner Ahmed,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Bradshaw.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you have a signature one for us on that one?
Right. There is. Which one do you want us to sign? Do we need to sign 3 copies or?
I don't have it, I don't know.
Yeah, if we can pull one from the book and sign it. We were going to add it to
Can we adjourn,
next week's
please?
meeting. but,
Commissioner Bradshaw, can we adjourn?
It is 4:32. We will adjourn.